Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Monday, February 9th, 2026. I am John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine. With me, as always, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
Senior editor Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, John.
Washington Free Beacon editor Eliana Johnson. Hi, Eliana.
Hi, John.
And Commentary's social commentary columnist, Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
So, there's a lot of controversy in the last 4 or 5 days in the Jewish community about the Stand Up to Hate ad or Blue Square Initiative ad or Stand Up to Antisemitism ad that ran on the Super Bowl. And I just want to give you the pithiest version of response that I heard last night. This from an Orthodox rabbi on Long Island who texted a friend of mine and said, I guess God didn't like Robert Kraft's ad. Because, of course, the Patriots, owned by Robert Kraft, and this Blue Square Initiative, which is essentially funded, was started by Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots. The Patriots were humiliated last night in an absolutely dominating performance by the Seattle Seahawks. So the
you might say they were bullied.
They were bullied.
You might say they were bullied. You might say the Seahawks took their lunch money.
Yes, that's exactly the point that my friend's rabbi friend was making. That God was sending a message to Robert Kraft to maybe make a better commercial next year. So if you didn't watch the commercial, very briefly, a kid walks down the hallway in a school, very unprepossessing,
nerdy, nebbishy,
right? A nebbishy kid walks down a hallway in school. But someone tries to hip check him into the locker. He opens his locker, and there he sees the words "dirty Jew" on his book, and then a hand comes and puts a blue sticky on top of the sticky that said "dirty Jew," and he said, "Don't believe that." And then he looks over, and there's this nice black kid, and he says, "Thanks, man." And then it says, the Blue Square Initiative, because what you're supposed to do, not that the ad explains this, by the way, which is another really wonderful quality of the ad, is you're supposed to go on Instagram and put up a blue square. Because remember when, after Black Lives Matter, everybody was told to put up a black square on a certain Tuesday to show that you were in solidarity with Black Lives Matter? Well, now you're supposed to put up a blue square to show you're in solidarity with, I don't even know what. Is it don't call a kid a dirty Jew? Fine. Okay, great. Mazel tov to you. Yasher koach. That's really great. Okay, so there are 10,000 ways in which we can interpret this ad. I don't know anybody. That's the weird part is I don't know. It's hardly anybody that I know that was not puzzled, offended, or grossed out or made angry by this ad. So anybody want to go with why? Can we start with the why the ad hit people viscerally as exactly the wrong message at this moment?
There's so many reasons. I'll just go with one.
Like, did they screen it to a group of people?
Yes, I'm going to talk about that.
And who approved this?
I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
So I want to just have the reaction, then I'll tell you what the reaction of the Blue Square people has been to the criticism, because it's very interesting. But Abe, what's wrong with it?
I'll just go with one, and we can go around. Okay. I'm sorry if I'm yelling. My dog is going crazy, so I'm trying to talk.
Can't hear her.
She didn't like the ad either.
Yeah, exactly. Because it shows the kid with no ability to defend himself at all. That's merely one aspect of the horror, relying on someone else, or not even having someone else come in to sort of, just console him. The other is that this is not really how anti-Semitism functions out there among American students and on campuses today. It's not about that.
So it struck me as being really boomerish, because if you really wanted to show what would happen to a Nebuchadnezzar Jewish high school boy, he would be getting attacked on social media platforms by people who he knew, and everybody would walk down the hallway like nothing had happened. But I'm with Abe. No agency, as they say, for the victim. It was just, I have to go to my locker and wait for someone to rescue me. And that's not an appropriate message.
I'm going to tread in a more sensitive area. I'm not sure. I haven't followed the online discourse about this. But the kid who comes in and puts the blue square over the, dirty Jew sticker is a black kid. And that struck me as a poor reflection of the reality that we've seen play out since 2023, when I think a lot of Jews, including the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, realized that most of the Jews, 85, 90% of the Jews, had been for DEI for the past 15 years, but that after October 7th, DEI was not actually for the Jews. DEI was against the Jews and part of the complex promoting anti-Semitism. And so that struck me as a pretty poor choice for this ad. I also think the ad was, it hit the wrong notes because there's a real debate among Jews right now about whether we should actually be continuing the fight against anti-Semitism in these ways. And, Brett Stevens just gave these remarks about the state of world Jewry that I thought
will be Commentary's cover story in the March issue, which we will be closing tomorrow and will be online on Wednesday. Okay, go ahead.
I thought we should we print a transcript of these remarks?
And we are.
Okay. And the upshot is we should not be trying to fight anti-Semitism, because the best way to fight anti-Semitism is to recommit ourselves to Judaism, to practice Judaism, and to be more Jewish. And that is the agency that this kid would have had. Put on a yarmulke, practice Judaism, marry somebody Jewish, raise Jewish children, and the end.
Seth.
There's an AI, somebody made an AI version of the commercial where the story continues. Instead of somebody coming up and saying, don't listen to them, he tears the dirty Jew sticky note off his bag. And then you see him go through life as he grows up, and he goes to college, and then he has a family, and you see him, at Friday night Shabbat dinner, and then you see him in grad school, and then you see him become this kind of incredible brain surgeon or something, and at the end of the commercial he saves the life of the guy who way back in high school put the dirty Jew sticky on him, and the patient writes "thank you" on a sticky note and hands it to him. Very much like the plot of Israel and Yahya Sinwar, I guess. But you could do all these different things with it. But the basic problem is that nobody. I mean, I agree with Abe on this in the sense that the biggest problem is that nobody sees this in their daily lives, and so it's kind of sure, it's it got people's attention in focus groups and stuff like that because it's weird and unusual, not because it's really moving. That's my feeling about it, which is people watch this and said, is that what happens? Or the kids get a dirty Jew sticky note, put on their backpack. What he could have done is shown, a Columbia encampment on the quad. And that would have taken some real guts. And that was something that included what the ADL as well agreed was anti-Semitism. There's a consensus that these pro-Hamasniks, somebody on campus wearing an Abu Obaida hoodie and chanting for the next attack to be in Tel Aviv is not something that could be misinterpreted by anybody. And there were all these scenes of absolute, just insanity that weren't well, we can argue over whether from the river to the sea is a call for this or a call for that. There were all these explicit scenes of like genocidal, psychotic anti-Semitism that he could have shown real people. And maybe he doesn't want to do that for legal liability, but it's like, that's what we encountered. Okay. That's what kids encountered.
But in high school, what he should have shown is a bunch of young friends, men, hanging around talking and them showing each other, something they see on TikTok or Instagram Reels that's a very anti-Semitic bit of information, and the kid having to decide whether to say something or to just accept that kind of ambient anti-Semitism that is seeped into culture for young men at the high school level. It's the jokes, it's the references, it's the Tucker Carlson Fuente stuff. Do you sit by and just kind of smile and nod and don't rock the boat? Or do you stand up and, as Eliana said, say, no, that's not right? Because that's actually where I think the young men in high school, they're not getting sticky notes put on their backpacks. They are having to tolerate a certain level of anti-Semitism that is accepted among their peers as normal when it shouldn't be.
Okay, here's my problem. The problem is not that somebody goes and there's a message, an anonymous message in their, private, in their drawer, in their locker, or like in the mail, or on their front door with a sticky note that says "Dirty Jew." The thing that made the response to October 7th different is that it was full frontal, and everybody who was doing it, we know their names. They're not hiding. They're not like, oh, you're a dirty Jew. I'm not even going to say who I am because I don't want to get into trouble. They're like, my name is Phil Smith and you're a dirty Jew. My name is Muhammad Atta and you're a dirty Jew. My name is Francesca Albanese and you're a dirty Jew. My name is Kenneth Roth and you're a dirty Jew. It's not that it's an anonymous whispering campaign that makes Jews feel less than. It is a straight-on, head-on attack on our legitimacy as people, on our existence, and on everything that we believe and stand for. And saying that the problem is that it's making people feel bad. The issue isn't that it's making people feel bad. It's that universities and workplaces and other places, or particularly universities, are denying Jews their civil rights under the Civil Rights Act by treating them differently and allowing people to treat them differently and not intervening and interceding. So this ad is about how, can you people out there be nicer to us? Because you're making us feel bad. And so here's what you should do. And this is the other weird incompetency of the ad, though. I don't care. It's like, so the black kid puts the sticker on top of the dirty Jew sticker, and it's the blue sticker. And then you're supposed to put up a blue square on your Instagram. It doesn't say.
But John, don't forget, he puts it on himself.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't say, hey, put a blue sticker on your Instagram. The whole thing is about creating consciousness of the idea of the blue square, because the organization, which used to be called the Fight Against Antisemitism, rebranded itself as the Blue Square Initiative. So in fact, it's not an ad about anti-Semitism. It's an ad about raising the profile of the Blue Square Initiative. It is a solipsistic effort to gain market share for your organization to combat anti-Semitism, as opposed to the ADL or other organizations. That's actually what's going on, in my view, sub rosa. Now, why would they do this ad, particularly as Eliana? One of the other things is we've been spending 2.5 years now, or almost 2.5 years after October 7th, talking about how Jews should respond. And the general feeling in the Jewish community is not only that it turns out that all these people on the left aren't allies, but that they're enemies. And then what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to arm ourselves? There's the whole idea that Jews should go and like basically turn the entire American Jewish community should turn itself into a self-defense organization that is willing to, like not only stand up, but like fight back in some fashion against these acts of aggression that sometimes are physical, like the kind of like punching incidents in Borough Park and places like that. That's where the conversation has headed in the Jewish community. So, yeah.
Who was it who said, hey, the black square posting on Instagram was really great, and we should have a parallel movement in the Jewish community because that did a lot.
Yeah.
The
You know who? Dumb shit, nonprofit Jews who work in the nonprofit Jewish community, all of whom are focused on dumb shit, performative.
But there's a really interesting answer to that. There's a really interesting answer to that, which is that the answer is that the ad is appreciated, whatever you want to call it, by non-Jews and hated by Jews. That's
we have
the
no
essence.
Evidence that it's appreciated by non-Jews. I want to go into the response. I want to go into.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. I mean, they're from their perspective, they ran focus groups and they came out and said, "This is what happened when they ran the focus groups." And the ADL came out and said,
"So hold on, let me."
So I'm dealing with their claim. Their response is
right. So let's talk about their claim. Okay, the head of the Blue Square Alliance Against Hate. By the way, let me point out this was called the Group to Combat Antisemitism. They changed the name to the Blue Square Alliance Against Hate. Remember, after October 7th, the idea the problem is not hate. It's Jew hatred. It's not hate. We're not against hate. You can't be against hate. Hate is a human emotion. This was about hating Jews. And if you are universalizing the idea of hate, you are already conceding horribly that the problem is not specific targeted efforts against the Jewish people, but an atmosphere of hate, and that is deeply offensive. Period. And it's a shanda that it was done in the first place. That they backed off calling things anti-Semitism or Jew hatred instead to universalize it, which they did probably because they went and they had focus groups. And when they said, do you hate hate or do you hate anti-Semitism? And 6 people in the focus group said we hate hate, and 3 people said we hate anti-Semitism, and 3 people drooled, and then they had, oh my God, it's a 60% support for the hate as opposed to anti-Semitism. I've done a lot of focus groups. I've been involved in a lot of focus groups. And the idea that you glean actual information from focus group responses to things is so comic that it beggars description. Like if you watch focus groups of people who are not involved in the issue that they're being asked to, their opinions are very thin or very, it's like, do you like this or do you like that? Well, I guess I like that one a little more than this one, but it's like I wouldn't have anything to do with either. What happens is that people want something and they use focus groups and they ask questions in certain ways in focus groups to get the response that they need so that the patrons, like this is the people who run the Blue Square Initiative, the people who are giving them money, they can go to and say, look, we have all this data that shows this is how we should do it. It's the way they wanted to do it in the first place. Because what do they want to do? Do they want to fight anti-Semitism? No. They have some deranged idea in their head that they can reignite the Jewish black allyship system. And that by showing this black kid being nice to a Jewish kid, suddenly now we'll all be friends again. And it's okay. Ayanna Pressley doesn't exist. And Cori Bush doesn't exist. And the world of black anti-Semitism doesn't exist. And you know what's really nice is the tall, it's like My Bodyguard. So it's My Bodyguard, only instead of Adam Baldwin it's a nice tall black kid with a fro who seems very gentle and lovely, protecting the Jewish kid.
Kraft actually did like a press tour about this. He was on CBS in a segment that I watched, and this is what I mean about it not reflecting reality. He says, like, we're sponsoring, I might get some of this wrong because I don't remember exactly, but it's fakakta. Like he says, oh, we're sponsoring dinners and we're getting we're going to have Jews talking to black people and they're going to start understanding each other. Like, he's the first person to ever come up with this idea. And then the interviewer, who's like so credulous at what a wonderful idea, asks, and would you invite Palestinians to this dinner? And he's like, oh, I'd love to. It would be so great, because we just get people with different views sitting around a table and starting to understand each other. Like, it is so ridiculous. So ridiculous, and so not the way that the world actually is.
And that is why God breathed air into the nostrils of the Seattle Seahawks defense and sacked Drake May 7 times. I mean, that's what I mean by the joke about this.
That response, though, even if I think we should take their response is interesting in its own right, which is, I think, the debate in miniature, right? They say non-Jews like I'm going to use like instead of appreciate, but you know what I mean when I say like that it's effective on them, or it hits the right notes, or it tugs at their heartstrings, or they have the right response afterwards the next time they see anti-Semitism, whatever you want to say. Let's call it like. Non-Jews like it, Jews hate it. This is the ongoing, Dara Horn, people love dead Jews concept, right? I mean, the fact that non-Jews, and I'm going to say this, and I know they're going to hate hearing this, but the fact that non-Jews liked or appreciated the ad should set off alarm bells, because there is this dichotomy. There is this that Jews don't like the idea that they are fish out of water flopping around until some nice Gentile picks them up and puts them back in the lake or something. But the everybody appreciates the weak Jew. Everybody has a special place in their heart for Tevye, the dairyman, and the Jews who get their homes burned down and run out of Eastern Europe in pogroms and stuff like that. They don't love the Jews who have a really powerful army,
which
I don't love the Jews that have influence and all this other stuff. But so that's what I think is the key, is that they should see red flags in their own research, because however they're testing it in a way that is reinforcing.
I don't trust the testing, is my point. I'm now going to go to an important piece by Haley Cohen, which is in E-Jewish Philanthropy. She's which explains the idea behind the ad. Okay. So here's what Adam Katz, who runs the Blue Square Alliance, said. He said the group conducted a randomized controlled experiment between February 5th and February 6th, where about 1,000 viewers saw the group's ad and a control group that saw an unrelated ad. The survey research, according to the ADL, which helped do this research, found that the group that saw the anti-Semitism ad said they were more notably likely to, quote, think anti-Semitism is a serious problem, interrupt friends or family who make anti-Semitic comments, and feel more motivated to fight anti-Semitism. Katz told E-Jewish Philanthropy that the commercial was also tested for audience reaction by the Blue Square Alliance before it aired. They made tweaks to the ad so it would resonate more closely to viewers disengaged with the issue of anti-Semitism. Quote, our research goes very deep into who the Super Bowl audience is, what do they know, what do they not know, and we see very concerning data points around the awareness, visibility, and concern about anti-Semitism. It's just not on their radar. We're talking about over 100 million Americans classified as unengaged on the topic who just don't see anti-Semitism as a significant problem, as their problem to solve, or as something they can have an impact on. That's our audience. We start by coming up with lots of different content and put those concepts in front of a testing audience, which is representative of our target audience of unengaged. And by the time the ad was finished, it was, quote, tested many times in raising awareness, empathy, and ultimately raising attention to become an ally. It was an effort to create allyship that feels approachable, such as in a school setting, and that the phrase dirty Jew has now been used a lot more on social media. Okay, you know what? Here's my point. First of all, this is a fishy explanation. The ADL survey is done on the 5th and 6th of February. Today is the 9th of February. The ad was already in the ether I think, on YouTube and stuff the day the ADL tested it. So do you test an ad that you've already booked on the Super Bowl 2 days before the Super Bowl when you've already released it to the public to see? You're not testing anything. I don't know what they tested or didn't test. It didn't matter. The test wasn't going to have any effect on the ad. And if it did, it was only going to tweak 2 seconds of the ad because the ad was done. It was finished. I saw it on the 6th of February or something like that. So this doesn't pass. There's a smell test that this doesn't pass, number one. Number two, who's asking for allyship? The word allyship is the red flag. It's not that the viewers liked it or didn't like it. It's that their goal is allyship. Because people are unengaged and we need to make them allies. Allyship is a bullshit word, which is all about how Jews should go help other people and use all their money and give it to non-Jews to show that we're allies, or that people who are unenlightened should go and, we should go and support other people. Allyship never goes the other way because that's not what the doctrine is. Allyship is leftists saying, you give us money to be leftists. And you know what the leftist cause is? It's not Zionism. The leftist cause is, let's try to remake this alliance, the alliance from the 1950s and 60s between African Americans and Jews. What a glorious moment in our history that was, when we were all together, walking in lockstep.
There's another aspect of this, though, that I think speaks to what Eliana cited Robert Kraft saying on CBS, and it's a dilettante effort. It's a wealthy Aspen Ideas type thing of, we're all going to have dinners together. We're going to cultivate allies. We're going to put this stuff on Instagram, and this will have an impact on anti-Semitism. I don't question their motives trying to raise awareness and whatnot, but the means they choose and the way they talk about this problem shows absolute disregard for real life, and also a disregard for, as you say, John, what actual Jews would say to the problem of anti-Semitism, how it's defined by them. But it's the having dinners with lots of people around the table, and the virtue signaling of putting this square everywhere. That strikes me as the effort of a well-intentioned but bungling dilettante who doesn't really understand the deep and disturbing nature of this problem.
I just want to point out there's something else. I mean, this is also sort of emerged from what everyone is saying here, but another aspect of this very anachronistic spot, because to me it sort of looks like a special episode of Happy Days, like where Fonzie helps out the Jewish kid.
Boomer. Christine said it had a
right.
boomer.
Yeah.
Like there's no 15-year-old like this in the world.
I would have liked the ad if it had the Fonz as a cameo.
But another aspect of how this gets the present moment so wrong, John, as you say correctly, the anti-Semites are not anonymous at all. They're in your face. They do, however, sometimes disguise their anti-Semitism as anti-Zionism. That's a massive issue here. Completely goes untouched by this campaign, by this commercial. It's just not on their radar at all, and it's a huge part of the actual problem as it now is manifested.
This is such an important point, because if it was a more accurate ad, the sticky note wouldn't have said "dirty Jew"; it would have said "Stop the genocide."
Right, or it would have said,
you support genocide.
No, or there weren't enough. There weren't enough of you in the camps, or go into an oven.
It would have said child murderer.
Or it would have said,
this is what they did. They go to the AIPAC executive's house and they throw red paint and baby dolls. You're a child murderer. This is what Jews have had to deal with. You can call it whatever you want, but this whole, like, the blood of non-Jewish children has been at the center of this whole thing. And you could, yes, Christine's right. You could have taken a moment to even just have an accurate insult on the card, and the Jews watching would have gone, yes, that I see every day.
Okay, let's go back to the explanation by the Blue Square Alliance Against Hate, and what they learned from their focus groups, according to the ADL, on the 5th and 6th of February. Okay, they found. Remember, this is last week. This is the 9th of February that we're talking. So the 5th and 6th was Thursday and Friday, okay? They found the group that saw the anti-Semitism ad said they were notably more likely to, quote, think anti-Semitism is a serious problem, interrupt friends or family who make anti-Semitic comments, and feel more motivated to fight anti-Semitism. How do they know that? They asked this question on Thursday and Friday. Is there any evidence that what was the question? Will you interrupt your friends and family when they say something anti-Semitic? Yes, I will. I will interrupt my friends and family when they say something anti-Semitic. What kind of horseshit is that? I'm sorry to keep saying horseshit and bullshit, but like my head is coming off. That is not real. That is garbage, nonsense research where you are phrasing a question. What are people supposed to say? No, I'm not going to interrupt my friends and family when they say something anti-Semitic in front of me. Who wouldn't?
Well, no, they
say
know
that?
because they followed them around with those creepy Ring dog cameras that scan faces.
Okay, you're now making it reference to one of the weirdest
ad on the Super Bowl. Thank you, Seth.
Okay, we'll interrupt this for a second. So Ring cameras is like, if you lose your dog, you know what we do? We use the image of the dog, and then we look for your dog through our Ring camera all over your neighborhood and find it the way we'll find you.
Well,
if
so two of my neighbors didn't realize that's what the term
rule on where to put the garbage.
This is everybody who I know on my block who has a Ring camera went and reread their terms and conditions. The fine print. They're like, wait, they can search through our cameras without us agreeing. I'm like, oh, you agreed.
I mean, the advertising on this Super Bowl was so Aldous Huxley terrifying that I can't, there were 70, every year there's some new industry that like spends $100 million on Super Bowl ads and then disappears the next year. There was a lot of crypto advertising a couple years ago, so that people then, I assume, bought a lot of crypto and just had their shirts, lost their shirts last week in the crypto crash. But so this week, this time it was AI, advertising about AI and what AI can do for you. And it was, I wouldn't say that what it did was make me a lot more comfortable with AI. I maybe I come at this, with already an inherent bias against, but if that's what
if we've already skipped ahead to dog facial recognition, then we've skipped a step that I was afraid of was coming.
The AI. That's not even the AI stuff was like, don't worry, our AI isn't going to feed you to a cougar prostitution website because we won't have ads. The other AIs you've also never heard of, they're going to have ads. And when you ask a question, they're going to send you to a website with a 60-year-old prostitute. And I'm like, what? So I'm supposed to go to you in order to prevent this thing?
John,
I didn't even know
ageism is
was
a real
happening
problem
in
our
first place?
society. You should not mock it.
Okay, I'm not saying it's not. Anyway, but just to close the circle on the Blue Square initiative, here's what they want. They want allyship. They want the world to understand that Jews are feeble, incapable of self-defense, don't know how to stand up for themselves, and need somebody else who's taller and better looking and more socially acceptable to serve as their blocking tackle. I'm glad that it's called the Blue Square Initiative Against Hate, because I don't want the word Jew anywhere near this. And I don't want these people speaking for me or my people. And I don't want them to have any idea. I don't care what focus groups they do and what nonsense they peddle in these focus groups, which, as I say, are incredibly twistable, like any push poll. They are peddling an agenda that is an effort to strengthen the Jewish left's idea that what we need to do is go into alliance with other left-wing activists. And therefore, what we're going to end up doing is not talking about Israel, not talking about anti-Semitism, but talking about allyship. And Adam Katz, the head of the Blue Square Alliance Against Hate, was appointed last year. And the announcement of his appointment tells me that what he is a classic corporate TED Talk, goes on a lot of committees where they discuss what proper good HR rules should be type of person. Because he was at Wayfair before he did this, so he isn't like actually was at Wayfair, which of course makes crappy furniture. I'm sitting at a Wayfair desk right now, so I'm allowed to say this because I bought a Wayfair desk. And then before that, he was at the Boston Consulting Group. And then before that, he was the manager of football administration for the Philadelphia Eagles, where he helped manage the franchise's salary cap and player contracts. He has an MBA from the Wharton School. So is this a person? I believe no problem is unsolvable, not even hate. But solving the world's oldest hatred and achieving meaningful social impact requires more than good intentions. It requires a modern, data-driven approach. With my broad experience in the private sector, I understand how to maximize resources, measure outcomes, and scale solutions effectively. In the nonprofit world, these business fundamentals aren't just helpful, they're essential for transforming our mission into sustainable action that encourages and empowers Americans to stand up to hate in ways large and small. We don't care about standing up to hate. This is not about standing up to hate. It's about standing up to people who want to destroy the Jewish community, to sideline us, to marginalize us, and to destroy Israel. Hate is not the enemy. Hate is a human emotion, and this guy is full of shit, and this organization is full of shit, and anybody who gives it money should immediately send the money somewhere else. Because this is a disgrace, and it hurts more than it helps. And the fact that they peddle this social science nonsense research that is totally corrupted is, I mean, some people fall for it. People fall for this kind of thing every time. But the problem is not hate. The problem is hatred of Jews. It's specific. It's very specific. And you know what's unsolvable? Hate. You know what is not unsolvable? The security of the Jewish people in the United States and Israel. Because the security of the United States in the United States involves the enforcement of laws and the aggressive effort to aggressively stand up against actions against Jews that are harmful. Not to wait for somebody to come help. And the way
Can I just say, I mean, that is the point, and just we should spell it out, which is, people are going, what do you want? What do we want? The point of combating hate or anything like that is that the targets should just be able to live their lives normally. Nobody's actually asking for. So when you brought up before with the debate in the community, should Jews be armed? Why is there a debate about Jews being armed? Not because Jews want to go out and put on a sheriff vest and strut around with a handgun, but because they want to counteract and counterbalance the thing that's making it less safe for them to go around. In other words, you add something that puts you back at zero, at the normal. We're normal citizens. So if we need, to carry a gun to feel safe, fine, but we're carrying the gun to feel safe, not because, we're going, to shoot fish in a barrel. And the same thing is true with the civil rights stuff. How have we, is the black square on Instagram what got, the Civil Rights Act passed or whatever? Is that, is that what broke down the schoolhouse door that was being blocked by race? Is that what integrated busing? Is that, it's not a picture of something. The government has laws that you can't violate people's civil rights. So apply those rights to everybody. That's literally all it is. And that, again, it gets us back to zero. It's normal. Nobody's asking for anything special. What we want is to be able to go to school, whether it's a public school or our own private school, whatever it is, our own, Jewish school, and have the same experience as everybody else, not a sort of elevated sense of, protectiveness, but just totally normal. And the civil rights laws were made to make things totally normal. You, a young black child, could go to school here, or you could go to school here, and nobody was allowed to throw you out of the building for it, and all this other stuff. That's the essence of all of this. And one of the reasons that certain parts of the Jewish community are uneasy about this is because they are uneasy about Trump, and they don't like being on Trump's quote unquote side, and they don't like being associated with the bad press of, the person who got deported for writing an op-ed alongside the person who really needed to get deported, which was Mahmoud Khalil, and all this stuff, the casting a wide net and all this, the fight with the universities, all that stuff. But it all comes down to either you believe in federal enforcement of the rules on the books, or you don't. And if you believe in the enforcement, you believe in them for everyone, or you believe in them for no one. You can take a libertarian approach and say, I'm Rand Paul, and I don't really like the Civil Rights Act. Actually, I've had misgivings about it, and here's why. But otherwise, everything is about bringing things back to an equal playing field. It is not about some kind of war at which different groups are battling for the upper hand, and the Jews have it now, and these guys have it now, and that stuff. Let me
just amend this a little bit, because you're saying a level playing field, or like getting back to zero, if there ever was a zero. But let's say there was basically where like that's what the shift was after October 7th, was suddenly this atmosphere in the United States that was unlike any atmosphere that I've felt in my 64 years. Fine. Okay. Jewish self-defense is about deterrence. In order to get back to zero, there have to be two things. One of which is this, the fact that these attitudes, like whatever, this population of anti-Semites crawled out from under a rock, from either where they've been hiding or they've been brainwashed over 20 years or something like that. So what do you do with that? Well, you can try to change that, which is let's fight hate, and we'll teach people to feel better about Jews. How likely is that to happen, really? I don't know. But that's where Jewish self-defense stuff comes in. If you deter not only organizations, but people, if the idea is Jews make up a very small number of the population of the United States, but they are not going to put up with being treated this way. So we have what resources we have to hand. We have a lot of lawyers, and we can sue people who do X, Y, and Z. And we can, we have the federal government, which is right now has a congruent opinion to our opinion that it is not right to treat kids on campus this way. So we're going to, encourage them and work with them to enforce these civil rights laws. And it gets down to this question of at the street level, do people want to think twice about going and punching a guy with a kippah in the back of his head because he might have a gun, which is what the idea of the Second Amendment is about in many ways. Concealed carry laws, which are data to suggest that they have lowered crime rates in various places, don't you think that Haredi that you're walking behind is like an easy target? Don't think he's an easy target. You have no idea whether he's an easy target or not, because he might be. He might be a neurasthenic yeshiva bacher who does nothing but study all day. Or he might have a gun. So you know what you do? Don't punch him in the back of the head.
That would have been a good commercial.
Thank you.
The yeshiva student with the gun.
Yeah. I'm just saying, deterrence, if hate is the problem.
And you'd call it New Square, not Blue Square.
I just did a rim shot there for Seth.
I don't want to.
Okay.
That was the best joke.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to stand up. Actually, it's not to hate, but maybe it is, because I want to get. We started this conversation on our text chain, and then we had to break it off to come here and record, which is the Super Bowl halftime show, because I'm very conflicted about this particular halftime show. And as grateful as I am not to see a woman my age spinning around a stripper pole this year. And I'm learning Spanish, so I was kind of happy to see what words I could pick up from Bad Bunny's act. I also realized that our country has become, with the Super Bowl halftime show, way too polarized. I mean, look, I would, if I was the designer of the show, I would just have Fugazi reunite and do an entire set, and half the country would hate that too. But what I really dislike is that now there's this
Fugazi?
alternative. Yeah,
90% of the country would hate that.
Okay, well, they're just wrong. But there's now this alternative, Super Bowl show, which is like the respondent to the State of the Union address, where it's become totally politicized. And, good on Kid Rock for getting up there and trying to rally the crowd. But I hate that it's become so divisive. And I guess that's why I either bring back the marching bands and the variety show type thing they used to do. But I don't know. Maybe you guys loved it. It became instantly political the moment he started singing.
I think Bad Bunny might have turned around the midterms for the Republicans.
Okay, so you're on the didn't like the show.
I disagree with that. It's like, I thought it was fantastic. And you want to know why I thought it was fantastic? I sort of know. I know Spanish a little bit. I couldn't make out any of it, so I assume that even Spanish speakers can't necessarily make out a lot of it. I just thought it's the first time they made a halftime show that was actually created for the audience at home. They didn't care about the stadium. The whole thing is taking place in this cornfield down on, I'm sure no one who was actually in Levi's Stadium in San Francisco.
Sugarcane, I think it's sugarcane.
I'm sorry, sugarcane. Anyway, but it was like no one could have seen anything because it was all done to a handheld, aimed at a close-up handheld camera as he walked through the sugarcane maze, and there were various, bodegas and piragua ice stands and stuff like that. And I loved it. And my thing is, you are hearkening back to an age that does not exist, because what made the Super Bowl halftime show a legend? Do you remember? Like, it was nothing, and then they started having then they decided to have U2 do a show in tribute to 9/11. That was before that. It was like there was like a Motown medley, and there was this and there was that. So what was the thing that made the Super Bowl show like a legend? It was the wardrobe malfunction. It was when Justin Timberlake tore off Jennifer Lopez's outfit and her nipple was exposed.
No, Janet Jackson. Janet
Jackson, excuse me, not Jennifer Lopez. Okay, so that was 23 years ago. So it's always been a subject of social controversy, as has the Super Bowl, because remember how dirty the ads used to be? Remember the ads were like nearly pornographic for years? Like the way they would sell these ads was they were sort of nearly pornographic, because they knew the audience was like 80% male and stuff like that. So whether it was excessively political, maybe another question. But it was better than Kendrick Lamar. I'm saying it was better than Kendrick Lamar's show last year. But Abe didn't like it. So Abe didn't like it. I loved it. Seth?
Well, can you say something? I
Yeah.
agree that it was an unbelievable undertaking. Like,
Yeah.
it was incredible feat.
Mhm.
It just did nothing for him. I'm not mad about it either. I just did nothing for him.
Okay, but you said it. You made the joke that it's going to win the Republicans the midterms.
Oh, because I think other people are mad about it. Yeah.
I don't think anybody who is mad about it isn't already aligned with voting for the Republicans in the midterms, and the polling suggests that there aren't enough of them yet. But Eliana, what did you think?
I was really much more focused on, the people I was with and the food I was eating than on this stuff. And I don't feel that strongly one way or the other. I will say my mom's from Peru. I speak Spanish, but my general feeling about this was, is it really too much for these people to put on a halftime show in English? Like, that annoyed me. And then to have, I understand Puerto Rico is technically part of America. I get that. I'm not hostile to Puerto Ricans, but like wave an American flag, and then to mention America, the Americas, and like America is just one of all these other countries, and Peru and Chile and Ecuador and America. And no, the Super Bowl is like a big event in the United States of America, which is the greatest country in the world. And I thought that was like a tacit political statement that was intended to annoy people like me, and it succeeded.
Okay,
and
fair enough.
That bothered me.
By the way, I noted, because of course the Olympics started, right, on Friday night, and they had the Olympic ceremony. And I gathered I'd never noticed this before, but they did the parade of the athletes of all the nations.
Yes.
And Puerto Rico has its own Olympic team that is separate from the United States Olympic team. They only have one athlete or two or something like that. But Puerto Rico was its own march by itself. So it is part of the United States, or it's not part of the United States. I mean,
they have their own flag.
Well, every state has its own flag.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, apparently they've had a basketball team there's a Puerto Rican basketball team that has played in the Olympics before. But I mean, I was struck by that because of this whole conversation where I also very proud said, well, it's part of America, so you can pay tribute to Puerto Rico and all of that. It's fine with me. But they have their own Olympic team?
I was always more surprised that Canada has its own team.
Yeah, but we beat them in curling.
Does Greenland have a team separate from Denmark? That's what I want to know. Because, when we take over Greenland, they are not going to have their own Olympic team. That is going to be, and whatever Nook turns into Trumpville, they're going to be carrying the Trump flag. That's all I can say. All right, so we have
also. I should say I was equally, just as much as the performance itself annoyed me. Everybody who loved it so much annoyed me just as much. Starting from a place of total indifference.
I just thought it was fun.
Oh my gosh, it was so great. It was so amazing. You shouldn't care that the guy doesn't speak English and did his thing in Spanish, and it's so wonderful. And that bothered me just as much as everything else.
I just thought it was fun.
At least he ended with a message as bland and useless as the one that the anti-hate campaign. It's like, it's all about love.
Yeah.
Oh, and
we're all America together.
Or something. Total crap.
Yeah.
Well, there was one.
Christine.
There was one real test during the show of who loved it and who was virtue signaling, and that was at one point in the show he hands his Grammy to a small child, and there were several large accounts on Twitter who spread the idea that the kid who was handed the Grammy during the show was the kid who was in the famous arrested photo last week or the week before, who was separated from his parent and was seen sort of being hustled into almost like perp walked or whatever, into a car, and it turned out that wasn't the real story, whatever. But they was just like this, oh, look, can you believe that? What a stroke of genius. He gave it to that boy. And apparently the boy was nowhere near California.
No, it wasn't that kid.
Last night.
People,
so I just thought it was funny that like the people who were really into the political symbolism of it all were like, oh, look, there's a Hispanic kid. It must be the one Hispanic kid whose name I know, who was in an ice truck 2 weeks ago or something. That's how you could tell the difference between people who were watching it for like, this is enjoyable no matter what language it's in, or I don't like the music. And the people who were looking, who were like putting it under, a microscope to find something that they could consider some sort of political or ideological triumph. And anybody looking that closely at the thing was doing it wrong to begin with. I didn't actually have strong feelings about the show either way. And that made me feel weird because everybody in my timeline seemed to think one way or the other. But
okay, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I liked the camera work. I liked Lady Gaga doing the Bruno Mars song, which was sort of interesting in the middle. There was a moment where there was English when Lady Gaga was singing a Bruno Mars song. And then Ricky Martin looks really good, by the way, he's like 55. He looked fantastic.
That was AI too.
Probably.
No, Ricky Martin really does look
AI
good.
ads. Another thing to point out about the ads. So there were these various AI ads that featured de-aging. There was one with got people from Jurassic Park. And then there was one with Ben Affleck.
The Dunkin' Donuts ad, yeah.
Matt LeBlanc. It was very bizarre. It sort of mixed Friends and Good Will Hunting together. It made no sense. Fresh Prince. But the de-aging was horrible. It was like it was like, talk about not selling a product well. It was like, here, let's show you the uncanny valley that will mean that you will never actually want to use AI. Here's us trying to make Ben Affleck look like he's 25 years old again. Yeesh. Or like Sam Neill from Jurassic Park, who really...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. The de-aged Sam Neill was more terrifying than anything in the original Jurassic Park movie.
Yeah, it was just awful.
Poor Sam Neill.
Recommendation before we go. Movie out second weekend, Send Help. It is a revenge action it takes a lot of stuff and throws it into a blender. Rachel McAdams and a young actor named Dylan O'Brien that probably most of us haven't heard of end up basically on a deserted island together because they're in a plane crash. So it's like Castaway and Swept Away and Overboard and 10 other different movies. So it's a survival thriller, but mostly it's a story about what happens when a toxic boss ends up on a desert island with the employee that he has ritually humiliated. And it turns out that she is far more able as a person on a deserted desert island with no help coming than he is. And she has every reason to make life as difficult as possible for him. And it goes in all kinds of wildly unexpected directions. It is really funny. It is a black comedy, really. It's also quite thrilling, and it's got some real violence in it. But it is great. It's like the first genuinely like wildly enjoyable movie that I've seen in a long time. And so I really and Rachel McAdams is dazzling, and this guy Dylan O'Brien is dazzling. And so I heartily recommend Send Help at your movie theater right now. So we'll be back tomorrow, and I'll curse less, I hope. So for Eliana, Abe, Christine, and Seth, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.